Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Cal Boone is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Houston, Kansas, inside Allen Fieldhouse was the wildest or high-profile game of the weekend. We're going to dive into that pretty quickly, but I did want to start with the number one team in the country, Bruce Pearl's Auburn Tigers. Great season inside Neville Arena. Great scene Saturday inside Neville Arena. Final score, Auburn 53, Tennessee 51. As I wrote in the lead to the top 25 and won on Sunday morning, Auburn was down 4 points at home with less than 2 minutes remaining. Duke had already won, so it's possible, not definite, but possible Auburn was playing those final 2 minutes for its number one ranking in the AP poll. Big spot. And the Tigers responded with a 6-0 run in a span of 97 seconds that flipped a 4-point deficit into a 2-point win. Yes, Johni Broome played for the first time in 2 weeks, came off the bench, got 16 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks in 33 minutes of action. KB, what'd you make of the way Auburn improved to 18-1 on the season, including 6-0 in the toughest conference in the sport? They were on the ropes by definition, and yet did what they had to do to flip a loss into a win, and they had that place rocking and rolling on Saturday night.
Yeah, huge spot for Auburn. This was a spot where I thought, we made the pick before the game. I thought Auburn would win and would do so pretty comfortably. Tennessee really came out and made this kind of a knockdown, drag-out fight. It was 53-51, and this is kind of the style that probably Tennessee wanted to make this game, and they really had Auburn on the ropes at Auburn. But Johni Broome was fantastic in this game, and obviously did not make the start, but was huge off the bench, had 16 points, 13 rebounds after being questionable. And after the game, Pearl said post-game, like he wasn't even sure how much he would play Broome and really whether or not he would see extended period of run whatsoever. And I think they would not have won this game without him. And Auburn, they had to overcome a lot of adversity within this game. I don't know if you saw some of the drama behind the scenes, but Ja'Kai Howard, posted like a cryptic tweet at halftime with, some praying hands emoji and kind of a thinking face emoji. I don't know. I'm maybe not hip enough to know exactly what that means, but he come out of the locker room and he's like not shooting with the team. He plays a couple minutes, has a conversation with Bruce Pearl, and Pearl like just points to the locker room, and Howard just goes to the locker room. He's done for the day. So they still end up winning the game despite that. So credit to Auburn for overcoming, the Tennessee Volunteers, and also maybe some self-inflicted adversity within the team as well.
Yeah, and for people who aren't familiar, this is one of the same players who was involved in the fight on the plane that had to be diverted and emergency landed, and then he served a de facto suspension for that. He's a talented guy. Bruce has been doing this for a long time. He's dealt with, let's just say, knuckleheads before. But, man, it ain't even February 1st. You ain't one of my best players, and I got to deal with you again. Like, I already had to land the plane because of you, and now I got to deal with you again. Like, I'm on national television. We got game day here. I'm ranked number one in the country, and I got to take my focus off of the game for a minute to deal with you, and then I got to tell you to go to the locker room. Bruce can do whatever he wants. I would get tired of stuff like this.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not my job to get paid millions of dollars to win basketball games. So if it were, I might be a little more tolerant of stuff like this from talented people. But, buddy, be careful. They're better college basketball players than you that have been removed from things for less than this. And you keep being a problem. You better start being more of an asset on the court than you are a problem away from it. Because if you don't get that ratio fixed, well, then, I know how these things tend to end. But BP, after the game, did say it was a thing. I talked to him after the game. We're fine. So we'll see where it goes from here. But just, you're right, a little sidebar that didn't need to be there, but it was there. And
pro or against in-game tweeting, by the way, GP?
Yeah, probably do that. And I'm like you. I'm too old. You're not too old, but I am too old to be trying to interpret emojis from college-aged people. I mean, I'm too old to try to do it with like John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. here in Memphis. They like to get some emojis out sometimes, and people text me like, "Do you see Ja's emojis?" I was like, I don't. Ja means with his emojis. If Ja wants to explain, you can talk to him at the next press conference. So I don't know exactly what the emojis were supposed to mean. I'm sure somebody hipper could tell us, but it's not a good look. It's none of it. None of this is a good look. Let's get back to Auburn as a basketball team. I mentioned 18-1 overall, 6-0 in the SEC. They have 11 quadrant one victories. And this is why I said earlier, it's possible they were playing those final 2 minutes for their number one ranking, but not definite, because I'm not sure they are anymore. Mm-hmm. My point being this, are they so far ahead of the pack right now in terms of resume that they could actually lose a game, a quality game, and still be number one in the top 25 and number one in the AP poll? Let me put it to you this way. Then you answer that question. 11 quadrant one wins right now. That is 3 more than anybody else in the country. All right. They have 3 more quadrant one wins than anybody else in the country. Oregon is second with 8. All right. Nobody else has more than 6. So Auburn has 3 more quadrant one wins than anybody else in the country and 5 more than everybody else in the country except Oregon. That's where we're at. Even if Auburn, because this week they got at LSU and at Ole Miss. That's tough. 2 road games. Even if they were to lose one of those games, let's say they lose at LSU on Wednesday, right? They would still have a resume that's better than anybody else's in the country. Now, I know Duke has strong computer numbers and Duke owns a win over Auburn, and these things matter. But if Auburn loses on Wednesday at LSU, because this will be something I've got to deal with on Thursday morning. If Auburn loses Wednesday at LSU, I'll have to wake up on Thursday morning. More likely, I'll do it at 3 o'clock in the morning after I get out of studio. But either way, it'll have to get done. And I've got to make a decision. What do I do now? Because traditionally, you're number one and you lose, and people just wake up the next day and they expect for you to not to be number one anymore, right? I don't necessarily subscribe to that way of thinking. Think of this as golf. If you've got a 5-shot lead going into 18 and you double bogey 18, you still win the tournament, right? I think Auburn's got like a pretty comfortable lead going into, and we're not going to 18, but you get the golf analogy.
Yes.
They're at the top of the leaderboard, and there's a gap between them and everybody else right now. So what I'm about to tell you is true based on current numbers. If Auburn were to lose at LSU on Wednesday, they'd be 11-2 in quadrant one. Mm-hmm. They'd be 18-2 overall and 11-2 in quadrant one. Duke, who is the team that's sitting there ready to replace them, would be 17-2 overall, but still only 5-2 in quadrant one. Auburn would still, with the loss, be 11-2 in quadrant one. Duke would be 5-2 in quadrant one. I think Jerry Palm would agree with me. You would wake up on Thursday and Auburn would still be the projected number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. And that's why I think you could make an argument that we have reached a place where Auburn can take a sensible loss, like a loss in quadrant one, and still wake up the next day and be considered the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. And for my purposes, perhaps the number one team in the top 25 and 1. What do you make of what I just said?
I agree with that entirely. And I agree with that specifically because the top 25 and 1 is a season-long ranking that mostly correlates right with bracketology, right? Like you look at Jerry Palm's bracket, you have Auburn at number 1. He has Auburn as the number 1 overall seed. I do tend to think that AP voters, and I do a tomorrow's top 25 and 1, or tomorrow's top 25 today, every Sunday, kind of projecting how AP voters will vote on Monday. And
by the way, let me stop you for a second.
Yes.
That's a great idea. I don't know if you came up with it or one of our bosses came up with it, but like I've seen it gets good numbers. People are looking for that type of thing. That was honestly the idea behind the very first me doing rankings. I really used to only do them on Sunday nights. And it was the exact same idea. Here's what I think the AP polls should look like tomorrow. I'll give you one extra team. That's the top 25 and 1. That was the original idea behind it. Then it was like, you want to do it every day? And so here we are. But getting back to that, it's just a new it's a different version of something we used to do coming from a different voice and it doesn't have to match me. You and I are different people. This stuff is all subjective, but I like that you do that. And I gather it's doing well.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And it's fun because I get to see kind of the trends with how AP voters react on a week-to-week basis. And given that, I actually think Auburn would have dropped had they lost this weekend. I actually think Duke would have supplanted Auburn as the number one team in the AP poll on Monday. Not necessarily thinking that I would agree with that. In fact, I'm more in line with you. I think you look at just overall resume. Auburn, they have more quad one wins. They have a better resume overall. Duke is still very high up there and projected number one seed. All of that. But Auburn, I think in terms of what it has done to this point in the season, there's no question. The number one overall seed. So, yeah, I'd like to just to kind of to your point, I think, they could take a reasonable loss right now. Auburn could and still remain number one in your top 25 and one. Would totally agree with that assessment. AP voters, I think, I've found are a little bit more reactionary, and I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn took a loss at some point. Duke keeps winning. They have the longest win streak in college basketball. Duke could end up moving up to number one. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is true. If Duke were to win this, if Duke is still sitting here as a 2-loss team next Monday and Auburn loses a game this week, I do think AP voters would then move Duke to number one. I'm not sure it would be right.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I think they'd probably do it. And I never want to, there's like 60 something AP voters. So when you start talking about the stupid AP poll and dumb AP voters, like you're roping in a lot of people who don't deserve it. So let me be clear. Not all AP voters are lazy. Not all of them are reactionary. Not all of them are incapable of doing the work, or at least uninterested in doing the work. But some of them clearly are every week. It's why I started writing the poll text column. So the lazy thing to do without really thinking about it, the way you and I are talking through it, is to just be like, well, number one lost and number two won, so number two is now number one, right? That is probably what they will do because there's enough people like that who contribute to that poll. I'm not certain it would be right. I don't think it would be right. I think there's a scenario where Auburn could still lose a game and still have clearly the best resume in the country. And if you are trying to rank based off of resumes, which is largely what I try to do with the top 25 and one, then you've got an easy case to make to just keep Auburn there even after a loss. I'll deal with that if I have to deal with that middle of the week. But now one of the things I read somewhere, maybe like Instagram meme or something, like 90% of the stuff, 95% of the stuff you think about and worry about never really actually happens. So it's just a lot of waste. That's exactly what this could be. Maybe Auburn never loses again. You never have to have the conversation. But if they lose, I'll figure it out, just like I always do. With Tennessee, just 3-3 in their past 6 games. I still have them 6 in the top 25 and one. The resume is still super strong, let's not lose focus of they were up 4 in the final 2 minutes against the number one team in the country on the road. Like, I'm not going to punish a team for that. If you're ranked 6 in the country and you go play number one to a one-possession game, like, I think you should still be 6 in the country. So I left Tennessee where they were, but just 3-3 in the past 6 games. Up next for them, they've got Kentucky coming to Knoxville on Tuesday. When we come back, turn our attention to what I think was the game of the weekend, Houston, Kansas in double overtime. They played 50 minutes total. The final 20 seconds of the 45th minute were wild. We'll talk you through that. We'll do it in a second. First, though, let's get a word from our partners.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Final score, Houston 92, Kansas 86 in double overtime inside Allen Fieldhouse. I mentioned the final seconds of the first OT earlier. Let me just walk you through what happened. So with 18.3 seconds remaining in the first overtime, Kansas is up 6 points. This is nuts. And DeJuan Harris is at the free throw line to shoot 2. I went back and watched it today because yesterday we had people over and we had a bunch of TVs going and we had it on, but I wanted to go back and just really make sure I got every bit of this exactly right. If I remembered it the way it actually was. So it's interesting. I went back, I watched the final 2 minutes of it. And when DeJuan Harris gets fouled, you've seen this in college basketball all the time. It's a pretty normal thing. The crowd knows the game's over. Mm-hmm. It's 18.3 seconds out. We're up 6. DeJuan Harris foul out of necessity. We got to stop the clock. And now we're walking to the other end and the crowd's on the feet. It's it's that applause of we recognize the game is over. That's what happened inside Allen Fieldhouse. That's it. We did it. It was a 6-point game and they had the ball, but now it's a 6-point game. We got the ball. We're going to shoot free throws with our point guard. That's it. Rock. They were getting ready to do the rock chalk whole deal. Right?
72% career free throw shooter.
Woo!
He's usually pretty money. Yeah.
If he makes both, they're up 8 again with 18.3 seconds remaining. If he makes one, it's 7, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, you make a free throw and the game is over. He missed both. Kansas is still up 6. Technically with 7.6 seconds remaining. Kansas is still up 6 points. Still fine. And then Emmanuel Sharp buries a 3 with 7.5 seconds remaining. 3-point game. Still fine. You still got the ball. All you got to do is inbound it, get fouled, go make one freaking free throw, and the game's over.
Easy.
Incredibly, Zeke Mayo throws the ball away. Turnover. And then Malik Wilson, a reserve, who has been a low-volume 31% shooter from beyond the arc for his college career, ends up with it, naturally buries it, tie score. The game against all odds goes to a second overtime, and that's when Houston takes control, pulls away, outscored them 13-7 to win the game 92-86. Kyle, this is the part that's wild. Per KenPom, Houston had a 0.4% chance to win the game when DeJuan Harris was at the line shooting those free throws with 18.3 seconds remaining. And yet the Cougars still won, which means the Houston win was the most unlikely victory in any of the 1,487 games between AP top 25 teams over the past 15 seasons, according to Jared Burson, the man who invented research. There was, I don't know if I ever told you this, but there was a time in this world, and it predates our adult lives. There's a time in this world things would happen, and people would be like, man, I wonder if that's never happened before. And we'd be like, I don't know, because we didn't keep up with it. So it'd be like, man, that was a neat thing that happened. Wonder if that's ever happened before. I don't know. I don't know if it's ever happened before. There's no way to know. Then comes Jared Burson. He invents research, and now we know all this stuff. Every time something happens, we know the last time it happened. And what Jared Burson told us last night on X, that was the most unlikely victory from a point in time. That became the most unlikely victory in roughly 1,500 games between top 25 teams over the past 15 seasons. Just a bananas ending.
I got to think they were like making some notes on some stone tablets way back in, the Stone Age. Like,
I think there's a book about that.
I'm reading it right now.
Okay. I think there's a book about that. I got a copy. Maybe I don't open it as much as I should, but I do have a copy.
But I think you're right. Jared did actually create research.
That's my understanding of it.
Yes. Just a total collapse from Kansas. I mean, like a shocking collapse from Kansas, the preseason #1 team. Kansas never loses games like this. And more to the point, Kansas never loses games like this at home. They never lose at home, period, basically. And it was a collapse. It's just a total collapse. Rest in peace to anyone who had Kansas +1. I think we both pretty confidently made this pick like, oh, Kansas, a home dog. Like, what are we doing here? Kansas should be home dog.
I don't know if I was confident as much as
I was.
I don't know if I was confident as much as I was just like, I'm just not picking against Bill Self and Alan Fieldhouse. I know he has lost there, but it don't happen much. I'm just not going to do it. But I don't know that I was confident because I had just watched Houston hold Utah to 36 points.
That's right. That's right. Yes. But Kansas at home has been just kind of a money printing machine over the years. They've only been home underdogs twice, since 2020, ended up winning both of those games. So, even going into the overtime with 7.6 seconds left, you're thinking, gosh, they have a 6-point lead. DeJuan Harris going to the free throw line. This game is pretty much over. And man, just Houston continuing to battle, continuing to fight. They get some timely shots late, force a turnover. Kansas just has a miserable time getting the ball inbounds on numerous occasions in this game. And I watched both press conferences after the game, and man, I'm happy for Kelvin Sampson because he was ecstatic. That was a great win for his Houston Cougars program. He was like, hey, look, Kansas played better than us. And, we probably should have lost, but we continue to fight. Like, even when it looked like it was over, we continued to battle. Really proud of our guys. And Self more or less said the same thing. Like, I thought we played like well enough to win the basketball games. Just sometimes things happen. Sometimes fluky things can happen. I don't want to say that the Houston win was necessarily a fluke, but like that sequence of events leading to the end of regulation and leading the end of the first overtime just does not happen very often. And you blow a 6-point lead twice in that game for Kansas. Just an incredible game, super fun to watch, unless you're a Jayhawks fan, in which case, ouch. Yeah, ouch.
It was especially a great day for Houston, rather. As we've noted on the podcast in recent weeks, like the Cougars have incredible computer numbers. We all know they're really good. They're always really good under Kelvin, but the resume isn't there. Heading into the weekend, they were 5 seed in Jerry Palm's projected bracket. I think I had them 15th or 16th in the top 25 and 16th maybe on Saturday morning. And Houston fans obviously don't like that. They're Houston fans, right? And if they could pull the number from somewhere else, they want to know why you don't have that number. So if they could pull a good KenPom number, net number, they want to know why it doesn't match up with the top 25. Because I'm mostly resume based. So was Jerry Palm with the bracketology. But again, he had Houston as a 5 seed. There's not much in terms of substance yet, even if obviously the team's great. Here's my point. So you go to Houston, go to Kansas, get a quad 1 win, obviously. Then, because Central Florida beat TCU by 27 yesterday, UCF jumps from 76th in the net up to 65th. And I understand some of this stuff is just confusing and perhaps boring. I apologize. But these are numbers that matter to the sport. And so that's why we reference them. UCF jumps from 76th to 65th in the net. So that flips KU's win at UCF from earlier in the month into a quad 1. So or Houston's win at UCF into a quad 1. So Houston goes on Saturday morning. Houston wakes up 0-3 in quadrant 1. Wakes up on Sunday morning 2-3 in quadrant 1 because they get the Kansas win and that UCF win gets flipped into Q1. And now Houston has 2 more quadrant 1 opportunities this week at West Virginia on Wednesday, then hosting Texas Tech on Saturday. So that 2-3 could be 4-3 by next Sunday night. Houston obviously operating at a real high level. On Kansas, just 4-4 in quadrant 1 now. After being preseason number 1 in the AP poll, they also have a quadrant 2 loss, and they've lost twice at home. None of this is normal for Kansas. They look like the classic good but not great team. Still top 10 in most computers, but how many times this year have you watched Kansas play and been like, I think that's a team that can win the national championship? How many times have you thought that while watching them?
Very few times.
Yeah.
Very few times recently. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And you're supposed to be able to think that about a preseason number 1 that is still in the top 10 at most computers. That thought should still pop into your head more often than it pops into mine. Mm-hmm. It just looks like a team that is clearly good, has great pieces and a great coach, or really good pieces and a great coach, but I don't know if the pieces fit. And some of this is, AJ Storr is somebody they spent a lot of money on, I'm assuming. I mean, he was the leading scorer at a Big Ten program last season that made the NCAA tournament. I don't think that comes to Kansas for free. And he's just been bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, last season he averaged 16.8 points per game. This season it's down to 6.6. Shooting percentages down across the board. He's 0 of 6 from the field in 18 minutes yesterday in the loss to Houston. So this is a guy who has gone from starting and leading an NCAA tournament team and scoring to 1 year later is coming off the bench and not doing much. Percentages down from the field, 3-point line, and free throw line. Thinking about this, how much money was spent in the state of Kansas on Coleman Hawkins and AJ Storr to get this little in return? Storr's a bad player on a good team, and Hawkins is a whatever player on a team that's, nice win this weekend, but still just 2-6 in the Big 12.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, this is, you can't miss. When you go out and get a big name in the portal, you have to hit on those guys. And AJ Storr, I think good player historically, just maybe a bad fit with this Kansas team. And 18 minutes, as you mentioned yesterday, but really not productive. 0 points on 6 shots. And that has been the case for most of the season. This is not like a surprise. He has mostly played his way out of favor with Kansas. And, Shaq Moore's getting some minutes. Zeke Mayo has really kind of been the only guy that they've been able to consistently rely on that they got out of the transfer portal. Rylan Griffin did have a big day yesterday, hit 5 3-pointers, and that was better than kind of we've come to expect from Griffin. But they're really just they have not completely hit on the transfer portal class in a way that people thought and projected that they would. And when you miss out on several guys, and particularly with Storr, who was kind of the high profile name, it hurts you. It hurts you in a real way. And yeah, this is clearly not the preseason number 1 team that people thought it was coming into the year. They had some early wins that looked encouraging. They beat North Carolina, they beat Duke, but since then they have just kind of been hit or miss, and definitely not the team that I think many people expected that we would see from Kansas and Bill Self this season.
Yeah, I think you'll remember at the end of last season, Bill was talking about a lack of depth and how he was already thinking about next season, and he was never going to find himself in this situation again. And then they went out and they built a roster that I thought was preseason number 1. AP voters thought was preseason number 1. And then they would add to it. Mm-hmm. It'd be like, okay, Kansas number 1. Oh, well, now they're going to go out and get another dude. Whoa, okay, they are really – fast forward to today. Marco Jackson was hurt in the preseason. KJ Adams is hurt right now. And AJ Storr can't play.
Yep.
So now it's not nearly what it was last season when they were struggling with depth problems, but the team we thought you had on paper is not really the team you have right now. The team we thought you had on paper at one point was like Marco Jackson, former 5-star, sophomore. Maybe there's a breakthrough there. AJ Storr, leading scorer on a Big Ten team. Okay. KJ Adams, just role player, but still. Well, he's hurt. And even before he was hurt, I know there's some advanced stuff that suggests he is important on the court, but like in terms of traditional stats, not a lot there. And Kansas fans, he drives them crazy. I do radio in Kansas City every Tuesday. I don't want to say they can't stand it. That sounds mean. They don't love him as much as, they would like to. And now AJ Storr is giving you nothing. Quite literally yesterday, basically nothing. So, that's how you go from being the team everybody thinks can cut nets in San Antonio to being one. Less people think can cut nets in San Antonio. As always, we'll see, but they don't look right. Now, keep in mind, they were also up 6. We could be talking about Kansas coming off of a win over Houston. We should be talking about that, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what we should be talking about. They were up 6 with 8 seconds left. So, probably not as bad as I just made it sound for 5 minutes, but you get the point. Good team, just not clicking the right way. Mm-hmm. We'll see where it goes from here. Next up for the Jayhawks, Tuesday against UCF. And then Saturday, they go to Waco to play Baylor. We'll bounce around the rest of the sport next, touch on some other notable results from the weekend. But first, let's get another word from our partner. All right, KB, interesting situation down in Tuscaloosa. Alabama beat LSU Saturday, 80-73 inside Coleman Coliseum. Whatever. The story is that Mark Sears was benched the entire second half. You handle the headline, CBSSports.com. Just for folks understand, this isn't just like good player got benched by his coach. This is the preseason CBS Sports National Player of the Year got benched for an entire second half by his coach and was seen on the bench having a pretty interesting back and forth with an assistant coach. It looked like the classic head coach, assistant coach type of thing. A head coach is like, enough of this. You just sit over there for the rest of this. And then assistant coach is trying to smooth it over and make it better. But they were talking the cameras were on them for a long time. They were talking for a long time. Run us through what happened in Tuscaloosa yesterday.
Yeah. So, Mark Sears, as you mentioned, a preseason All-American, the guy who we thought would be the National Player of the Year coming into the season, 0-5 shooting from the field at halftime in that game against LSU for Alabama, and did not play at all in the second half. Nate Oates was questioned about it after the game. Said was Mark Sears dealing with an injury? Was this a coaching decision? What went into that? And more or less, he kind of danced around it and said, hey, look, I just wanted to play the guys who I thought gave us the best opportunity to win the game. And the players that I played were the best players that I felt gave us the opportunity to do so. And he was asked about it, challenged about it again. more or less said the same thing. And essentially, he gets around to saying, like, I challenge my team. I want to be better on defense. I want to have more defensive intensity. Said he was pleased with the defensive intensity that he saw in the second half, much more than what he saw in the first half. I think it kind of alluding to the fact that maybe he wasn't pleased with Sears and what he was bringing on defense. And also, if you're not adding a bunch on defense and also you're 0 of 5 shooting, well, if you can't balance that out with some sort of offense, then there's not really a reason in his mind to justify playing Mark Sears. So he played 0 minutes in the second half. Alabama wins the game. And it essentially serves as kind of a challenge to maybe this entire Alabama team, but specifically to Mark Sears. Like, we got to get more from you on defense. We got to do things that we hope contribute to winning. And, I think he challenged some of his guys on the team and in the second half. Some of those guys responded. Sears, obviously not among them. He did not participate in the second half. And we'll see kind of how this Alabama team responds, because Sears, entering the game, was the leading scorer in the SEC. He is now the 3rd leading scorer in the SEC after putting up a goose egg on Saturday.
This has been building.
Yeah.
This is never a spur of the moment. When you see something like this, it's never just something that happened at halftime, or rarely something that just happened at halftime. This is something that's building. This is something they've been talking about at their practice facility. This is something they've been showing on film. This is something they've been saying we need more. And then you get out there and it's just not resonating. Mm-hmm. It's just as the father of young boys, it gets very frustrating when you keep telling people to do these. This is what I need from you. And you're not giving it to me. Every morning, this is what I need from you. And you're not giving it. At some point, you got to, me talking to you and telling you ain't enough. It ain't working. We got to do something. We got to try something else now. Now, what you try next is open for discussion. But at some point, you got to try something else. That's what this is. Hey, man, we can be great with you, but we cannot accomplish what we want to accomplish unless you're giving us more on both ends of the court. And if you're not going to guard and you're not going to make shots, then just come over here, buddy, because you ain't doing nothing for us. All right? You hope it snaps him. And I've seen this with other basketball teams. Sometimes that public shaming is too hard of a word, but you get the point. That's a very public thing. When you set down the preseason National Player of the Year, that's something you're going to have to answer questions about, right? Yep. And Nate had to answer questions. And Nate even said, let me go ahead and get this out of the way. He was like, let me go ahead and tell you what I did. I played the guys. He knew it was coming. He knew he was going to have to talk about it. You don't make that decision lightly. You make it because you hope that it might hurt us today, but we hope it helps us long term. Mm-hmm. It's going to make today harder and today more uncomfortable, but hopefully we're better for it. That's what that was, because Mark Sears has not been that great this season. He just his shooting percentages are down everywhere. He shot above 50% from the field last season. This season, it's below 40. Rebounds down, steals down. Preseason CBS Sports National Player of the Year. To be clear, I voted Cooper Flagg. You guys did me in. I voted Flagg.
I voted Flagg.
Okay, then let's blame Norlander for screwing this up for us.
I agree. Absolutely. It's Norlander's fault.
Every week. Who named Cooper Flagg preseason national player? It was us. Look how smart we are. But Norlander took us down this Mark Sears path, and now he can't even play the second half against LSU. Mark Sears was the preseason CBS Sports National Player of the Year. Right now, the Kim Pom SEC Player of the Year rankings, he's not even top 4 for SEC. That's Johni Broome, Walter Clayton at Florida, and then Tennessee teammates Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler. So he's gone from being what some of us, Norlander, some of us thought would be the best player in the country, to not even being a top 4 player in the SEC according to the Ken Pom algorithm. So this has been building, and it came to a head on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's a huge highlight. Like, this is an Alabama team that went to the Final Four last year with Mark Sears putting on a show. Like, he was one of the best offensive weapons in college basketball, and took it to a new level during the NCAA tournament, carried Alabama to its first ever Final Four. And you expected the expectations from the way that season ended to carry over into this season. for myriad reasons, it has not. Now, Alabama is still a very good basketball team. And, I think that's a credit to what Nate Oates has put together. Like, they are 17-3. They're 6-1 in the SEC. Like, they are figuring things out, whether or not Mark Sears is playing at the level that we've come to expect him to play or not. And winning that game, it kind of feels like hey, look, man, we're gonna get this thing rolling, and we want you on board. But if you're not going to get on board, then jump off. You know what I mean? So it's a very public shaming. I agree with that. Maybe it's a little bit harsh, but you're benching, one of the best players in college basketball. It's a little bit of a shaming, and we'll see how Mark Sears is able to respond to it. I think, again, Mark Sears is so talented, one of the best offensive weapons when he is playing at his best in college basketball. And the way that Alabama plays, they're super fun. They're very fast. They play a 3-point heavy style. I imagine he will be a big part of Alabama's success in the coming weeks and months, but this is definitely a big roadblock for them to overcome.
Long term, I don't know what it'll be. That's up to Mark Sears, right? He's got to decide that. I can't determine what this means long term for him. That's up to him. But I'd bet you $1 come Wednesday night, they're playing Mississippi State. He'll be in the starting lineup. And I just do this. Make sure you're there for tip-off. I bet you he fights through screens. I bet you he is, I won't call him a great defender. I bet he is trying hard in the opening minutes of that game, because that's the message that's been sent to him. Whether you can keep doing that, I don't know. That's a mindset thing. It's very easy in any aspect of life to be better for a second. Your boss says, hey, you've been showing up for work late every day. You can't show up late anymore. All right. You're like, okay, I'll be better this week. Then by next week, you're back to doing what you were doing. Right. It's very easy to slip back into old habits. We'll see. But I bet you he comes out on fire on Wednesday night. Offensively, I don't know, but you'll see the effort that his coach clearly wants from him. And then we'll see what happens after that. Let's stick in the SEC. A couple more things. Vanderbilt 74, Kentucky 69. Big win in Nashville for the Commodores. Vandy's now, I mentioned this to Norlander, I think last week. The SEC has been so good that we barely spent time on Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. Vanderbilt 16-4 overall, 5-4 in the first 2 quadrants, 3 quadrant 1 wins, including victories over Tennessee and Kentucky. 3 of their 4 losses are to top 25 teams, specifically Alabama, Mississippi State, Missouri. I moved them to 26 in the top 25 and 1 this morning. I got Vandy ranked. Are you okay with that, or are you going to judge me?
How about that? Yes, I agree with it. I love that you're moving them up. I love that they're probably going to be ranked on Monday in the AP top 25. At least that's how I'm projecting it now in my tomorrow's top 25 today. How about the Doors? Beat top 10 Tennessee last week, beat top 10 Kentucky this weekend. Mark Byington 16-4 in his first season with Vanderbilt. And, I think it's like a perfect encapsulation of how you can completely turn around a program in one season with the transfer portal. I mean, he's got 8 of his top 9 scorers are all first-year guys from the transfer portal. And they're winning games at a really high level. Like, the SEC is having a fantastic year, better year than we've seen in probably over a decade. And Vanderbilt is very much on its way to being an NCAA tournament team after this weekend. And the way that Mark Byington has put this team together, this is a fun team. 16-4, a factor in the SEC. No one really saw this coming, and I like it. It's a lot of fun to watch this Vanderbilt team play, and a win over Kentucky this weekend. Yeah, I think getting them into the top 25 and 1, that's a rightful reaction there.
One last thing from the SEC, 2 Texas schools, just because it was a wild game. Texas 70, Texas A&M 69. A&M was up 22 at one point, up 14 with 6:42 to play. Then they let Texas back in it, and then Tremont Mark, buddy, he made them pay nada. Let's watch the end of this together.
Ignores it, gives it up to Larry. Clock is at 7. Here's Mark, had a game winner last year against them. Off the window and in! Tremont Mark gives Texas its first lead of the game. Wade Taylor across midcourt, off the rim! Texas comes from 22 down, and the Longhorns win against their rivals 70-69.
We've had 4 versions of Wade Taylor. None of them can make logo threes in Austin yet. So A&M loses. The Longhorns win. And now Texas has won 3 of its past 4 after starting 0-3 in the SEC. So Rodney Terry's got that thing flipped around a little bit. Longhorns are 3-4 in the SEC heading into Wednesday's game at Ole Miss. And for A&M, like those just drive you crazy, right? You got the game, the whole game, and then you flip a win into a loss. But earlier in the week, like A&M was on the right side of this. They were at Ole Miss, and they stole one there. We're down, and then so like you got one there. You gave one back this weekend. I guess the stuff kind of balances out. Let's go to well first, like what Tremont Mark, second straight year, the game winner against A&M. Is that the type of thing you think could actually spark Texas's season, or is that just a nice moment you're just going to be a middle of the pack, lower of the bottom third type team in the SEC?
Yeah, it's let's wait and see what happens with Texas. Maybe they figure some things out. Trey Johnson had 24 of his 30 points in the second half there, kind of keying that turnaround. They were down 22 points, and man, Texas A&M, just cue the Billy Madison. You blew it. Cannot believe that. Texas led for entire 3.7 seconds in this game, and that was the final 3.7 seconds of the game. So huge shot from Tremont Mark, huge win for Texas, and we'll see if this propels a turnaround for the Longhorns and Rodney Terry there in Austin.
Okay, let's bounce around a couple of other conferences. Just notable results I want to get your thoughts on. Duke 63, Wake Forest 56. That's another one where Duke really struggled to start the second half. It looked like Wake had it in control, and then Duke just takes control in the final minutes, wins it by 7. We shouldn't get bored with it just because it's normal. Cooper Flagg, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists in a road game to improve Duke to 17-2 overall, 9-0 in the ACC. You and I have been high on Cooper Flagg from the jump.
That's
KD.
right.
I wish everybody else at CBS Sports would have, but I meant what I said. Don't get bored by this just because it's becoming normal, because this is not normal. This is somebody who turned 18 years old last week. I don't want to say running away with the National Player of the Year race, but he's clearly the favorite now, and I think he's going to extend. I think the Player of the Year race is closer today than it will be a month from now. I think Cooper Flagg is going to run away with this thing, and he has met all expectations, exceeded some. I know you've evaluated him for years, had him projected as the number 1 pick in whatever draft he was going to be in for years. Just because I've talked to Norlander about this a bunch. I don't know that I've talked to you. Just your impressions of Cooper Flagg through 19 games of this Duke season.
Yeah, he's outperforming even the lofty expectations that I had for him. And, Wake made this game a little bit more interesting than I anticipated. Duke pulled away late after kind of starting slow in the second half. But Flagg was awesome. 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He did have 7 turnovers in this game, but look, this is a guy who just turned 18 years old. Like, he's one of the youngest players in college basketball, performing at a level that, frankly, like if I were to cast a vote today, he would be the National Player of the Year. And the impact that he's had on both ends of the floor, I think, is really impressive. Duke has another stud in another freshman in Con Knipple, who had 15 points and 9 rebounds in this game. They're really putting things together at a high level. It's kind of scary just how young this team is, and the pieces that they're relying on. They don't play like a team that is relying on true freshmen in ways that they are. So Duke is one of the best teams in college basketball. I don't see them losing again in ACC play. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. I thought that they would win pretty comfortably in this game, but man, you look at their schedule moving forward, like even, they've got North Carolina twice over the next month and a half to close out the regular season. They're going to be projected to be favorites in every single remaining game in the regular season. And, the way that they win with balance, they're number 6 in adjusted offensive efficiency, number 3 in defensive adjusted efficiency. This is a really talented team with the best player in college basketball competing at a high level. And in a game where, I kind of thought they deserved to lose, they end up winning by 7 points. Like, it's scary how good this Duke team is. And the way that their trajectory is pointing right now, it's very encouraging.
Yeah, like 20-0 ACC record would be wild. It's in play. It's definitely in play. I assume they'll just slip up somewhere on the road. It'll be some weird road game you don't see coming.
Clemson.
It'll be at Clemson. Yeah, it'll be. I mean, I was gonna say it'll be at Virginia, and I'm like, no, it probably won't be.
No, probably not.
Like it'll be at Miami. No, it probably.
No.
It's either at Clemson or at North Carolina to close the regular season. But like Duke going into Carolina to close the regular season at 19-0 in the ACC would be wild. Now, I mean, they're doing it. I would assume 19-1. I would pick 19-1 is more likely than 20-0, but 20-0 is obviously
it's in
play. Yes, they've been great. Okay, Michigan State 81, Rutgers 74, and I bring this one up now because there are 4 Power 4 conferences now. For basketball purposes, we also consider the Big East a power conference. But in terms of the way we talk in college athletics, the Power 4 is the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. And Michigan State beats Rutgers to remain undefeated in the Big 10. Michigan State is now 17-2 overall, 8-0 in the Big 10. In the 4 Power 4 conferences right now, they all have a team that is still undefeated in the league. In the SEC, it's Auburn. In the ACC, it's Duke. In the Big 12, it is Houston. And in the Big 10, it is Michigan State after Michigan State goes into the Garden and beats Rutgers. Of those 4 schools, which one's going to take a league loss first? I know you're not going to say Duke because you don't think Duke's losing. So it's either Michigan State, Houston, or what's our other? Michigan State, Houston, and our other power, Auburn. It's one of those.
I'm going to go with Houston. And in fact, I think Houston loses this weekend. They got to go on the road at West Virginia on Wednesday. That's going to be a tough one for them. Coming off a double overtime win at Kansas, I think Houston would be my bet. Duke is obviously never going to lose again. And, we'll see, I guess, with the others there. Michigan State could end up slipping up. But, yeah, I would take Houston. I think they got some challenging tests ahead. The Big 12 is pretty loaded. And going on the road at West Virginia is a tough test.
In the Big 10, earlier on Sunday on CBS, America's Most Watched Network of Stars, Maryland, Indiana. Terrapins go into Assembly Hall, win it 79-78. Indiana was up 5. These poor people. My God, I feel so sick for them. They were up 5 with 2:18 left. Maryland cuts it to 2. And then the Hoosiers, they got Rodney Rice. Nada, let's watch Rodney Rice on let's watch the internet go out in Bloomington, and let's do it together.
Inbound. Now Gillespie. Give it now. Gillespie gets rid of it. 10 seconds to go. Fans wanted to travel. Rice to 3. Good! Good! Got to push it. Rodney Rice puts Maryland up by 1.
These poor people. And Miles Rice, I think, at the other end ended up taking a bad shot at the buzzer.
Another bad shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like just a bad shot. This is it, right? I mean, I don't know that this is it, like announcement tomorrow, but it's gotten. I was on CBS Sports HQ earlier today and was asked, what does Mike Woodson need? How hot is his seat? And it's like the hottest. And at this point, it feels like it's irreversible.
Oh, yeah.
Like what I said on HQ was, if we were in San Antonio getting ready for the national championship game and Mike Woodson is still the coach at Indiana, that would be wildly surprising to me at this point. Even if Indiana were to win today, I don't think that turns the season around, but they lost, hearts ripped out at home. And I saw somebody tweeted this, student section. I have no context for this. I just trust what I saw. It said the student section at IU for like a Big Ten home game is going to be filled 90 minutes before tip-off, typically. They took a picture 90 minutes before tip-off today. Nobody there. It's just once that happens and the Fire Woodson chants happen and you're about to finish lower in the computers than you started for the 4th consecutive year, you're about to finish outside of the top 5 in the Big Ten for the third time in 4 years. They should have got you last year probably and hired Dusty May. They're going to end up regretting that forever, or at least for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. But they brought you back, gave you a bunch of money to go roster build with. You recruited a team that can't shoot. Now it can't shoot. 68th in the net. Yeah, this is it. This is we can start talking about who's going to be the next Indiana coach, because that's a more reasonable conversation to have than what does Indiana got to do to turn this thing around. You said it Friday. You didn't think they'd win another Big Ten game, and I don't know if I'd go that far, but I don't think they'll win many. And they're certainly not going to win enough.
No, they may be favored in 1 or 2 of its remaining games, 2 according to KenPom, but. Yeah, the balloon, the air in the balloon is deflating quickly there in Bloomington, and yeah, it's not going to turn around, unfortunately for Mike Woodson, unfortunately for Indiana. So this thing is over. It's kind of just running out the clock on the rest of the season.
One more game I wanted to touch on just because it is our reigning and back-to-back national champions. UConn went to Xavier and got caught 76-72. So now the Huskies, and yes, they dealt with the awful Maui and the Liam McNeely injury and a variety of other things. They are now sitting here 3-3 in quadrant 1, just 7-5 inside the first 2 quadrants with a quadrant 3 loss on the resume. They're down to 35th in the net, down to 36th at KenPom, down to 34th at Torvik. I removed them from the top 25 and 1 this morning. I'm not speaking to their ceiling. We might look up in March and we go, oh man, here they go again. But right now, they do not have a rankable resume.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they'll be in the AP poll on Monday, but I don't think that they should be.
I agree with you. I don't think that they should be. I think they probably will be, just based off AP voter behavior and kind of how they typically rank teams. But yeah, they're 6-3 now in the Big East. Cruel twist of fate, honestly, for UConn and for Dan Hurley, because earlier this week, Hurley obviously caught on live TV yelling at a ref not to turn his back because he's the best coach in the bleeping sport. And then Hurley calls a timeout late to drop a play for UConn, trailing by 2. UConn can't even get a shot off before the shot clock expires. Of course, Xavier defense was very good, but yeah, UConn failing to get a shot off there before the shot clock, end up losing by 4. It's a tough scene. And I think the UConn team that we saw a few weeks ago is more emblematic and representative of what the ceiling of this UConn team can be. This can be a very good UConn team, top 15 or so when McNeely is healthy, but they just really have not had the pieces there together for any long extended period of time. Maybe if you're looking at futures, maybe this is the time to buy some UConn stock because it's very low at this point. And, I think probably things will only get better from here, but this is another low point for the UConn Huskies.
Yeah. If somebody wants to argue UConn's going to be one of the best 25 teams in the country come March, argue away. I won't even try to counterpoint you, but they're not right now. And they don't have the resume to support that. So I took them out of the top 25 and 1. And again, the team that took their place this morning, your Vanderbilt Commodores. Before we get out of here, let's look ahead to the next 2 days. On Monday, it's not the best schedule. NC State at Duke in an Elite Eight rematch from the 2024 NCAA tournament. We get Iowa State at Arizona. That amounts to a big Monday Big 12 game between. We opened talking about celebrating Auburn as number 1, and then that incredible performance from Houston. Iowa State just keeps doing what they're doing. Yeah. They went to Arizona State, won with very little issues. Now they'll be at Arizona. They're terrific. Also on Monday night, UCLA at USC, a classic Big Ten showdown. On Tuesday afternoon, Ion College Basketball Podcast, going to go back to CBS Sports Network at 1 o'clock Eastern, so make sure to be there for that. Then on Tuesday night, we got a doubleheader on CBS Sports Network, VCU at St. Louis, followed by Cincinnati at Utah. Elsewhere on Tuesday night, St. John's at Georgetown, Kentucky at Tennessee, Wake Forest at Louisville. That's the most interesting stuff, I think. Let me ask you real quick about Cincinnati, because we've got them on our air on Tuesday night. This is a team that was ranked earlier in the season. This is a team that had high expectations. It's a team that I believe I had ranked in the preseason top 25 and 1, but I haven't heard from Cincinnati fans in a little bit, them complaining about my rankings, and that suggests that things haven't gone so well lately. It's been a pretty dramatic turn from them. They went from, oh man, they look good, to they don't look so good anymore.
Yeah, Big 12 play hit, and they have just completely fallen off. They've lost 6 of their last 8 games, and their defense continues to at least rate very well for Wes Miller and the Bearcats, but their offense just has not been able to keep up. They ended up getting blown out this weekend at BYU, 80-52, and most of their games here that they've lost recently have really not been competitive. Texas Tech is kind of the opposite example here, where they had some kind of ups and downs, and ends up their offense has kind of rebounded. They're starting to figure things out. They're 5-2 in Big 12 play, but Cincinnati going in the wrong direction. We'll see kind of how that looks this week. Got to go on the road at Utah Tuesday night. Feels like kind of a must win. Like, their season is starting to spiral here. They need some sort of momentum to interject to get things back on the track there.
I mean, just to put some numbers on it, rather than just vaguely say stuff like Cincinnati was good.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was 8th at KenPom at one point in this season, and they're down to 53rd now. So have really spiraled the wrong direction. We'll see if they can get back on track on Tuesday night. Again, that is Cincinnati at Utah on Tuesday night, preceded by VCU at St. Louis. And then on Wednesday morning, we'll be back right here on YouTube to talk about it all again. Strong job, buddy. I appreciate you being here. Good. We got some good reps in for March, when you and I are going to be talking probably like 3 o'clock in the morning after a Thursday night of NCAA tournament game. So I appreciate your time, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, if you were able to stick around this week on Friday and today watching the show, stick around for Tuesday. Norlander will be back. I'm sure he'll have plenty of stories from the slopes and his time snowboarding and all that he does this weekend.
All right. And if you were watching live during, the NFC Championship game, God bless you. God bless. I mean, I don't know that I would have. Like, I didn't even really want to be here right now.
No.
But I, we knocked it out, and now we can go focus on football. Specifically, if you were watching live, AFC Championship game tonight, 6:30 Eastern. This is called a promo. On CBS, America's most watched network. It's the network of stars. It's the Buffalo Bills against the 2-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, led by Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Travis Kelce, the biggest pop star in the world, expected to be inside Arrowhead. KB, who you got? Chiefs or Bills? Pick it.
Chiefs.
Yeah, I just can't. You know what? Exact same. I'm just now putting all this together.
Yes.
I've got the exact same mindset. There's no way I'm picking against Bill Self at home.
That's right.
Well, what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
No way I'm Mahomes at home.
Chiefs never lose at home. In Arrowhead? No chance.
No chance?
No chance?
I don't want to say no chance. Certainly a chance.
There's a chance. There's a chance. I think the Chiefs, as they do, they will make it a tight game because they only play in close games. Bills will make this close. But some crazy late penalty goes in favor of Kansas City. They end up pulling it off. Internet breaks down across the entire world, especially in Bloomington, and the Chiefs advance, go to Super Bowl.
I appreciate excellence. So
me too. Yeah.
If Buffalo gets there, I'll be happy for all of my friends who are Buffalo Bills fans and just that fan base in general. Buddy, they've been through it. But I do root for excellence. I would kind of like to see Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce become the first time three-peaters of the Super Bowl, right? So I wouldn't mind seeing that. Plus, my kids like Patrick Mahomes because I think most kids like Patrick Mahomes.
Of course.
So go Chiefs. Either way, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central. We'll have it on here at the Parish House. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend, Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening to the Ion College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.